On this week's show, I'm sitting down with a young up-and-coming comedian. INTV welcomes Miss Michelle Smoller.
I'm Michelle Smoller, and you're watching I'm Next on INTV.
I went to Poland recently because I wanted to see where some of the atrocities of World War II took place. And I got to tell you, everybody I told I was Jewish to was so supportive. Yeah, they were all so supportive. Everybody there, when I would tell them that I was Jewish, the locals would all be like, high five.
Welcome back to the show, guys. I'm your host, Sharifa, and I'm here with Michelle Smoller. She is an up-and-coming comedian who's performed at Caroline's and Comics. Welcome to the show.
Why, thank you, Sharifa. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So you're a 22-year-old comedian.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get your start in this?
Well, I actually started when I hosted my own television show when I was in university. And when I was there, I used to do monologues, and I would interview people, and I was always going to random events and kind of acting like an idiot and having a great time. And I would always go and tell stories to my friends, and I'm always a very animated person. I don't know if you can tell that about me, but I love to tell stories, and stand-up comedy is really the art of depicting something to your audience in a short period of time in a comedic way. And when I first tried stand-up, actually, a camera guy from my show was producing this show, and it was all guys. And it was on campus. They were kind of funny. They weren't that funny. But so I went up and I was like, hey, can I maybe try my hand at this? And I tried it, and I wasn't great, but I was okay. I got some laughs. And afterwards, it was like some female members of the audience came up to me afterwards, and they were like, wow, it was great to see a female performer, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, since then, I really have enjoyed it and been doing it ever since.
So you currently live and work in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And as a woman, have you found that it's difficult? Is it a hard industry to get in? Do people take you seriously? You know, you're a comedian, but being a female, do they take you seriously?
When I first moved to the city, it was like getting into the actual scene. Breaking in is tough. It's tough because there are so many people who come to New York City and who do stand-up comedy twice and are like, oh yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian. And you really need to like work the pavement and be outside the clubs and do barking and promoting and be on the streets with the community and really understanding what it means to be a comedian in New York City before you can actually gain respect as a comedian.
So what advice would you give to someone who is watching, who might be interested in stand-up comedy and not sure how to break in? What's like the top advice you would give to someone?
Well, if anybody out there is interested in, you know, breaking into the biz, the first thing you need to do is write, write, write. You cannot become a stand-up comedian unless you write diligently.
So do you have to be a good writer?
Well, yeah, but writing, like anything else, is a cultivated skill. You need to start somewhere, and you've got to start by writing. You can't become an amazing comedian if you never do comedy, so you've got to hit up open mics. You've got to go and you've got to listen to some comedy shows, go and hear some comedians out there, and actually listen to the way that they phrase their jokes. Listen to the patterns that arise, the cadence, the way that they speak, and the way that they present themselves.
So what kind of reaction do you get from most people when you walk up and say, you're a comedian?
Well, most people for me are like, oh, you're too whatever to be a comedian. And like, people think you're too energetic, you're too positive, you're too smart, you're too pretty, you're too this, you're too that. And on one hand, it's like such a compliment when someone reacts in that way, and I'm really blessed. But on the other hand, it's kind of an insult in a way because, you know, a comedian is somebody who's funny, who pushes boundaries, and sometimes it's really offensive when people underestimate me or underestimate other comedians. I know that a lot of people feel as though they always have to kind of prove that they're funny. People at parties are always like, oh, tell me a joke, which I don't think in a lot of professions people ask you immediately upon hearing your job to exemplify how you do your job and whether or not you in fact are competent in what you say you do. And so that's something within the comedic world that every comedian deals with.
Having to tell a joke on the spot.
Having to tell a joke on the spot, not wanting to, feeling as though it's rude when someone asks you to tell a joke. You don't ask a doctor to, oh, look at this. You don't ask an accountant to, do my taxes for me, do you mind?
It's like all of a sudden, I become this internet detective. It's like combine the powers of Sherlock Holmes, Nancy Drew, and Al Gore, and that's me. Okay.
So how long have you been grinding? How long have you been promoting and doing all of this?
I've been doing stand-up for about 4 years. I've been living in New York City for about 2 years. And I gotta tell you, until I moved to the city, I thought I was doing comedy, but I didn't even know what comedy was.
Really?
Yeah, it's like this city, and I think any large city where comedy is a really prevalent force, will bust you into shape. It will, grind you down, and it differentiates the men from the boys, the rough and tough people who are really in it to win it versus the ones who are interested in trying it. And that's great too. All of it is wonderful. Like, I think any person who puts themselves out there in a way really is putting themselves in a position to gain a lot from that as well. But, I've been on my grind for about 4 years.
There are a lot of comedians out there, a lot of people trying to make it, but like every profession, it's hard to get into. It's hard to be a Jay Leno and a Wanda Sykes and those type of people. What is your ultimate goal?
To be a Jay Leno and a Wanda Sykes and those types of people.
Okay.
I want to host my own television show one day. And so in the city I do a lot of hosting of events, and I'm hosting a video series in Africa this summer. And I am putting myself out there as both a host and a comedian.
Okay. So you say you're traveling to Africa. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's really interesting.
Sure. Well, it doesn't really pertain to my comedic career, but I've been hired to host a video series in Africa for the summer where a private company has hired me to highlight some of the social development plans that they've enacted. So I'm going to be going to Burundi, Malawi, South Africa, Kenya, Mozambique, and Dubai, and interviewing locals there and showing the impact that this company has had on the residents and on their lifestyles and the way that it's positively impacted their lives.
Nice.
Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned that it's important for someone starting out to study comics and study the comedians out there. Who have you looked for inspiration?
I really am inspired by Phyllis Diller, Joan Rivers, of course, and I really like Chelsea Handler nowadays. I've had the opportunity to work as a page for The Late Show with David Letterman, and it's amazing to see all working comics in the city because there are so many amazing influences to be drawn upon.
Good. And what do you want people to, when someone comes to your show, what do you hope they walk away with at the end of the night?
I want them to laugh. I want them to have fun. I think that audience members and viewers in general should enjoy watching me. And ideally, that's the whole point of doing anything in entertainment, I think. And so I just want the viewers to get away a sense of satisfaction in having laughed. But like a lot of other comedians, I also want them to think about things in their own lives in a different way. A lot of the jokes that comedians do are done to kind of push the envelope. And they're done to push buttons and to draw out, how hypocritical we all are and how embarrassing some of the things we do are. And I want the audience to laugh and to think.
So tell everyone where we can find more information. Where's your website at?
Well, www.michellesmoller.com. And check it out. There's a lot of info there, and stay tuned.
And of course, you can find more info right here at our site at imnexttv.com. Thank you again for watching, and we will see you next.